The idea that a country would steal thousands of children to re-educate them as future soldiers for them seems like something out of a bad horror movie, but that is the reality of the Russian Federation's operation in Ukraine, where they have taken literally tens of thousands of children to be made Russian. In the article, They Tried to Make Us Russians, the Children Putin Stole, we will learn horrible details, and thankfully from some of the survivors of this horrible operation. This is Maria Lvova-Belova. She is Putin's children's commissioner, and she has spoken and claimed to have taken 720,000 Ukrainian children. The children's commissioner even brags that she adopted a Ukrainian child herself. And unfortunately, no one knows the actual true figure. The Ukrainian government puts the number far lower at around 20,000 children. And out of these thousands of children, less than 600 have been returned to Ukraine. The director of Save Ukraine warns that the indoctrination is working. Quote, "It's 2.5 years now where they are at Russian schools and taught every day Russia is a great country and Ukraine is bad. The longer we leave them, the more assimilated they are, and the harder it is to get them to come back. Some contact us through our hotline saying they want to come home, but we have more and more Ukrainian children who, when we track them down, say, we want to stay in Russia because Ukraine is at war and we received Russian citizenship and don't want to come back." The article focuses on the story of two brothers, Sasha and Vova, who were 14 and 11 when they were taken by the Russian Federation from an orphanage after their mother had been killed in the war. According to Vova, they filmed us and made a video saying they were evacuating us to safety. Unfortunately, the reality was they were taking them close to the front lines, and these 11 boys and 4 girls, aged 7 to 18, were placed in a center for child social and psychological rehabilitation near Kherson. And this, unfortunately, was an empty facility because the director, Vladimir Sakhaidak, said that he had hidden the children patients there with friends and colleagues, fearful the Russians would take them. Quote, "We saw Russian propagandists saying that they needed to take children to send to military schools, indoctrinate them, and let them fight for Russia. I knew I had to take the children in 2014 after annexing Crimea and the Donbas and understood the same things would happen." He was right, because days later, Vladimir Putin declared Kherson and Zaporizhia as part of the Russian Federation, along with the so-called Donetsk People's Republic and Luhansk People's Republic. Because if you've heard the news that this was all about two states existing, wanting to be independent of Ukraine, that's all hogwash. It was always a plan for Russia to grow and annex more and more of this country. And we can see here, children abducted from Mariupol in Ukraine that was bombed into cinders at Moscow's stadium, celebrating. The first thing the occupiers did was open schools. Another recently rescued boy, Zenya, 15, told how at his school in Kherson, they had to sing the anthem every day, were forbidden to use the word war, and on Russian Defenders Day, they were told to make socks for Russian soldiers and write them postcards. One day, military recruitment officers came to the school and issued them military cards. They told us we will get free houses, a salary up to 1,000,000 rubles, and that when it got warmer, they would return and take us children to the fields to dig trenches. Vova and Sasha didn't go to the school because they had teachers with them in their group. They had been at the center for months when in October, they had a bus pull up. It was all very sudden. They were just going to have lunch when we were told by the headmistress, "You have 30 minutes to pack as we are going to cross the Dnipro River on vacation for 2 weeks." I didn't believe her, Vova said. He was right. They never came back. Only after we left, we were told we were going to Russia. After a 2-day journey through occupied Crimea, they found themselves in Anapa, in a place known as the Pearl of Russia, a resort town on the Black Sea. They found 200 other children and were given classes in patriotism. They had no real lessons. According to Vova, just basic things, chanting times tables and checking handwriting. Any mentions of Ukraine were negative. Quote, "They wanted us to become Russians." Vova and his brother and some of the others with them were very, very lucky because an NGO had already tapped on to where they were and were trying to already get them released. And thankfully, this had also led Vova to start hatching a plan to leave out of fear he would be sent to military school to fight. Luckily, on the outside, their uncle Roman had been trying to find them, and along with Save Ukraine, they were able to get them and 3 others back from Georgia. Uncle Roman said, "I'm so happy to have them back." He said outside the tumble-down house where he survives through odd jobs such as gardening, as well as growing potatoes, Like much of the region, the power was off after the attacks on energy infrastructure, and the house was a sweltering 38 Celsius. The psychological effects on all these children has been severe after multiple years in captivity. Their uncle, for example, said that whenever he opens a bottle of fizzy water, it makes Sasha jump. Knowing this challenge, Ukraine has set up camps with psychological treatment to help these children. One of their organizers who set up Gen Ukrainian, which runs one of the camps, said, "This is our hardest camp yet. These kids have something in their eyes which is different. They look at you as if they are adults with very old eyes." Under occupation and in deportation, they were constantly checked and punished. They agree to everything. It's submission on the verge of despair. Here we have strict rules and times tables, no phones, go to group therapy, and they all do it without protesting, even the teenagers. Children who return from Russian occupation are like mini soldiers. They are all very well behaved in a negative way, fearful of being even a minute late. It's painful to see. Unlike previous camps, she said, this time it took us much longer to develop contact with these children, as adults are a source of danger to them. The children also take much longer to develop friendship groups, saying, they don't trust anyone, even other children. They have seen teachers and neighbors become collaborators. Each of the children were given a notebook marked secret to write down their feelings and hopes, but these children were nervous about putting anything in writing. They were given art to do, and, quote, even the art, when we gave them paints, they waited to be told what to do. It is as if their imaginations were blocked. To help counter all the propaganda the children have been subject to, they brought in a history professor for a process of what is called cognitive deoccupation. Quote, for 2 years they've been told Ukraine doesn't exist. We, Russia, are a beautiful country that saved you. Gradually, the children were able to open up. Quote, we did it in the form of games and quizzes. We don't just want propaganda to replace propaganda. One boy, 15 from Kherson, remembered Russian soldiers stepping on him, telling him, you will make bullets with which to kill Ukrainians. Another, Max, remembered that not long after the Russians took over their area, his father, a welder, ended up outside during the curfew and was picked up, interrogated, and badly beaten. His father, a few days later, would have a heart attack and die. Max trying to save his father with a heart massage as medics never came. His grandmother died of grief earlier this year. Under occupation, his high school lessons became Russian ideology. Our books completely changed, and some of our local teachers became very pro-Russian. We were taught the Cold War was the fault of the West and that Khrushchev was a traitor who gave away Crimea to Ukraine. There are so many war crimes that have been documented again and again. The destruction of whole regions and so much loss. So when you see people deny that there's a genocide going on in Ukraine, you need to remember all of this. All of these things, the destruction of the Ukrainian future, the past, the culture, the present. And that is a crime that will go down in history as one of the worst ever. And know that you believing this thing happening in Ukraine is horrible doesn't take away from anywhere else. There are many horrible things happening all over the world, just like right now in Palestine.